Did you know that 2/3 of content marketers track KPIs, but only half use them to fell decisions? In this episode, we are talking about the Content Matters report from WordPress VIP, where they interviewed marketers on topics like content strategy, resources, and content analytics. One key takeaway: even in 2023, content marketing budgets are still growing, but marketers want to focus on quality over quantity, even in times of artificial intelligence. Content personalization is key to produce content that resonates with its target audience, and having content analytics in place is a must. My guest is Kayla Mehojah. Kayla has spent her career creating content in industries ranging from tourism to technology. After receiving her MBA and B.S. in entertainment management, she dedicated herself to pushing the boundaries of content marketing and has spent the last year as content marketer with WordPress VIP, the world's leading agile content management system. When she's not writing, editing, or speaking, you can find her sipping coffee, reading a good book, and snuggling with her dogs. Have fun with this episode and welcome to the Online Marketing Cabin.
The Online Marketing Cabin is brought to you by Impside, Europe's biggest WordPress agency. If you run a website or online shop or are in need of a WordPress or WooCommerce plugin, Impside is your go-to agency for solutions on an enterprise scale.
Hi Kayla, how are you and what keeps you busy these days?
Hey Marcus, I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. The sun is shining here, so that's nice for once. Right now we're working on getting our salary report published, which is going to follow up our Content Matters report, which we just put out at the beginning of the year.
Awesome. I'm so glad to have you here. You're telling the sun is shining. Maybe tell our listeners where you are based, because you're kind of on the other side of the world from where I am.
Yeah, we're at two very different times today. I'm in Kansas City, Missouri in the United States.
Yeah, so it's 9 a.m. in the morning for Kayla. A big applause, please, to her, or big kudos for joining us this early. I'm from Frankfurt, Germany, so for me it's in the afternoon, 4 p.m. And you already mentioned it. We're going to talk today about the Content Matters Report 2023, which you have put together at WordPress VIP. Please tell us a little bit about it. What the report is about and why is it interesting or should be interesting for our listeners.
Yeah, so the Content Matters Report, this is our second annual. We interviewed over 1,500 marketers, publishers, media professionals about all things content. So it really dives into the how, the why, the strategy of content, the trends, how it's looking towards the future. So it's really interesting. We found out a lot of really fascinating things this year, especially when comparing to last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you said comparing to last year, it's your second edition, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, we will dive into that in a minute. It's definitely a super interesting topic. I had a couple of reads in preparation for this podcast already. So we're definitely going to talk about some interesting numbers you found out and what they probably mean for our fellow CMOs and content marketers that are listening. Before we dive into that topic, I would love to know you a little bit better. I'm always stumbling across that sentence. I need to write it down, honestly. And therefore, we play a game usually. It's called Two Truths, One Lie. So do you have prepared 3 little facts about yourself?
I do.
You can tell us.
Yes. All right. You want me to just dive in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shoot ahead.
So let's see. The first one is that I have visited 14 countries.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is that I have read 40 books this year. And the third one is that I built a mechanical box to train my neighborhood crows to bring me shiny objects.
Oh my God, those are good. Those are good. I know we know only a little bit. So we've met in preparation for this podcast, and we met in London a couple of weeks ago on a networking event. So this was fun. And from having that first and second impression from you, all 3 could be true. I like especially the crow thing because that's very absurd.
Right.
But it would definitely match you overall, I think. But let's see. Every listener at home is invited, or wherever you listen to this, is invited to guess a little bit throughout the episode. Maybe Kayla is leaving some hints here and there, which let you guess what is the truth and what is the lie. By the end of the episode, we will reveal the lie. What a cliffhanger. It's so professional here. So, but yeah, let us proceed with your way into content marketing and what you're doing at WordPress VIP exactly.
Yeah, so I actually have a really interesting route to content marketing. I started with my undergrad degree in entertainment management, so kind of a niche degree. I went right into events and sales for a local entertainment district, having nothing to do with content or just a little bit to do with marketing, I guess. And from there, I decided I wanted to get into nonprofits. So I worked for a local museum doing sales and marketing for them. And then the pandemic hit, and we lost basically all of our revenue. So I had to kind of switch gears a little bit. I went into back into the for-profit sector, working for a transportation company, doing absolutely nothing that I enjoyed. But they had a position open up on their marketing team, and it was for a content specialist. And I have always been a good writer. I was writing for a while before that, just doing some freelance stuff to make some money on the side. So I was like, why not? I'll try it. So I applied. I got the job, realized I loved it. This is exactly what I wanted to do, which is funny now because this is exactly what my mom also does. She is also a content marketer. Yeah. Also in the tech industry. So I'm just following in her footsteps. But from there, it's actually a really fun story about how I got started with WordPress VIP because we were using Drupal and I absolutely hated it. And we were stuck with Google Analytics. I basically had to take a course and teach myself how to use it because I love data. I love knowing how what I'm producing is performing. So I was looking into some other options and found WordPress VIP and Parsley. And so I downloaded one of their reports, and I think it was actually the Content Matters report. And I ended up getting like a sales call with them. And I was looking kind of at their jobs. I wasn't really happy with the place that I was at. And they had a content position open. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to apply. The next sales call I had, I was like, hey, I applied for this role. Like, do you guys like working there? And both the salespeople I had were like, oh my gosh, yes, we're so excited that you applied. So long story short, I ended up getting the job, obviously. And so now I'm a content marketer with WordPress VIP and Parsley. Those are our two products. And basically, WordPress VIP is an enterprise web host platform. So we provide, enterprise-grade security. We provide CMS. And now with Parsley, we also have comprehensive content analytics. And a lot of that is built into the WordPress platform as well. So I am excited that I actually love the products that I work with. And not many people can say that. So I'm pretty lucky.
Awesome story. Thank you very much for sharing. It is so much in there, actually. And what an excellent example of employee advocacy.
Right.
Really, really shows that every touch point, every external touch point you have as an employee or where you're representing your company is so valuable that you show that you love your job, you like what you're doing at least, and be happy where you are and just be very nice to people.
Right.
Especially in the WordPress ecosystem, I think it's so important because it's relatively small. I mean, it's a large ecosystem, thousands of people working in, but it's a people's business, and you see each other everywhere and multiple times. And to have, to be open-minded and friendly to people is such an important trait in a character. So they can be happy to have you. I can say that. And I also think like your way into content marketing or marketing in general is also kind of similar to mine. And stereotypical for marketers in some kind of way. So you wrote before you dived into content marketing already, right?
Yeah.
So writing is your core skill, which you always can rely on and are super confident in. Okay, that's not something I struggle with. I always can rely on that skill. What
Right.
have you written before you went into marketing?
Oh gosh. Well, I kind of just started out as a creative writer. I really enjoy writing fiction and poetry and things like that as well. But when I was going to school, I really enjoyed research writing and writing about something that I learned about or that I knew a lot about. And I actually went back for my MBA a few years ago. And, during that process, there's a lot of writing, and I did my thesis work and stuff like that. And I was like, you know what? I think this is a skill that I have. I really want to hone it. And I ended up doing a lot of research on my own about what it takes to write for a business and what SEO entails and things like that. And the hard part about it is that you can't really learn that in school. So I had to rely on resources like HubSpot and, places that were really the experts and thought leaders on what content should be and what content really means for a business, and just kind of did it on my own.
Yeah, I think writing is such a skill, even in school. I mean, I had writing courses in university. I also worked in editorial offices in companies, but you have to learn writing by yourself. Even if you have something that teaches you how to write, you have to put in the sweat and go through all your failures and mistakes and want to become better intrinsically. Otherwise, you will never learn it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, and that you struggled with your CMS. Okay, it's Drupal. It could be any CMS. We don't want to blame Drupal here.
Right.
But, I think that's also something that many people share. Working in a company, are being forced into using a content management system that is not fitting your needs or just set up in a bad way. And to be honest, also WordPress can be set up in a bad way and
Absolutely.
be implemented in companies in a way it makes no sense, or with a bad theme, or whatever it is that makes a bad experience. By the end of the day, you are a marketer and have to do your job with a content management system. It's a tool. And I think the best marketers within our content management system are the people that know the struggle firsthand, what it means, for example, sitting with a deadline in the back, having to put everything into the content management system, and that thing is just breaking or has a usability of hell. And then you do over hours and sweat and cry. And then suddenly you join WordPress companies and want to make the web a better world, right?
Yep, that's basically how it goes, right? That's everybody's
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, I think that is very typical, and a great story. But I wonder why you didn't train your crows to crowdfund the museum you were working at. So that was not an option.
No, not then. This,
No. Okay.
I'm not giving you any hints about what's real and a lie.
Okay, people, the crowd training comes later. She was not a crowd trainer back then. Okay.
Nope, not quite.
Yeah, interesting. And I think your mother is in content marketing since longer than content marketing exists then, right?
Yeah,
I mean, back then
she
it
also
was just
started
called-
as freelancer, just a
Yeah.
writer, helping small businesses and stuff. And so she's literally seen content grow from the ground up, which is really interesting.
Like, it's not what we nowadays call content marketing. Back days, it was just, we have a website, especially
Right.
for small business and medium-sized businesses. It was just, can you create a website? And of course, there has to be something onto. And in the last, I would say 10 to 15 years, 10 to 15 is quite accurate, I think. We have gone a long way through content strategy and where we are today, but still it feels, if I read a report like the Content Matters report you have put together, it still feels like there's so much to explore and so much to research and so much to improve on each year. It's not that companies say, well, we're doing that content marketing thing since 10 years, and now we have figured it out, have our KPIs in place, and can measure the return on investment, and we're just producing. I mean, there's some, but most companies are actually each year on an iteration of learning, right?
Yeah. It's always evolving. I think that's what I like the most about marketing and content specifically, is that you really have to be on top of things, and you have to be sort of a leader in the market for you to, have that leading edge against your competitors. And it's always interesting. Like it's really an interesting industry to be in.
Yeah. I like, I will ask you in the next question immediately, what are your biggest learnings from a report, or facts that surprise you, or which we need to talk about first. But I just want to emphasize that I like, every time I speak with American people about, or US-based people about content marketing, SEO, they're directly putting it into the context of competition, which is absolutely right, because you said like what you need to do to stay ahead of your competition. And I think most companies, especially in Europe or in German, are missing oftentimes the point. There's only one number one in the Google search rankings.
Right.
And we are all aiming for that, or we are all aiming for the engagement on social media, and there's only one attention span of our audience. So it is actually a competition, and we have to do everything to make something that resonates with the user group. And US-based people are, I think that's just some cultural thing to have that.
We are just very competitive.
Yeah, it's very competitive, how you think. It's a very good treat for that situation. So long story short, Kayla, what are the key facts about your report, or what is it all about, what you were researching?
Yeah, so it's a pretty comprehensive report. There's a lot of stuff in there, so I won't be able to touch on everything today. I really encourage people to go and download it, because there's a lot for you to learn about what other people are doing. But I do want to touch on just like kind of the big key takeaways. And the first one that I let me just read through all of them, and then we can kind of go step by step. So the first one is that people are really focusing on quality over quantity. People are really tired of producing just endless content, right? The second one, and perhaps most exciting, is that teams and budgets, content teams and budgets specifically, are still growing, even though the economy is sort of in a downturn and things are uncertain right now. So that's really promising. The third one is that, understanding content performance is absolutely critical to proving the value of your content, and therefore increasing your resources. So that the next one kind of plays into that, which is data-driven decisions are really impacting that strategy success, and we see that over and over and over. And then the last one is that personalization is sort of overtaking SEO in the terms of focus for a lot of marketing teams right now.
That's a proud messaging. Personalization is the new SEO.
Yes, that's what I like to say.
I have written down it from your report actually. So it's what you're saying.
I'll have you know, my whole team when I wrote that. So I wrote the report, right, and my entire team was like, that's a pretty bold statement. I'm like, I'm sticking with it.
That's a catch. So that will be the title of the episode. Personalization is the new SEO.
All right.
Every SEO will click it and wait for us to deliver. No pressure. But I think it's what the content report is all about. What do you mean by personalization?
So personalization kind of has a wide meaning, right?
So the whole
and it's different for everybody, which is kind of ironic. But for at least for us, what we mean by personalization and in terms of this report is efforts to deliver targeted content to the right people at the right time. So really focusing on what it is that people want to read, what they want to consume, and delivering it to them in the right channel,
especially when you put it under the
at the right
strategic
time in
approach,
their day,
companies
in
are
the right
struggling with since forever, since the inventing of content marketing. It is like you spend too much resources on producing content, you spend not enough time on distribution, and then you're not analyzing anything. And
right.
what are you even producing? And mostly stakeholder briefed demands like we need a blog post for, but first of all, is anyone caring about the topic really? Is the channel correct? And then how to distribute that stuff. And I think it makes totally sense to what you said in the beginning, that WordPress VIP as a platform included Parsley for data analytics. To be transparent, that report pivots really strongly around that fact. You need good content analytics to know what resonates with your audience so you can personalize content, right?
Absolutely.
I'm really surprised by the fact, but that maybe has to do with the time when the report was conducted, that budgets, 60% of the budgets were still growing by that time. So the report is coming out early 2023 now and has been put together last year. So do you know when the questionnaires have been done?
Yeah, so we actually didn't gather the data until about end of October, early November, which is, I mean, things were already kind of looking bad then. So we actually thought about whether or not to include that in the report because we were worried that people would be like, oh, well, this is dated. But in reality, if you look at, what, pundits were saying and things like that, people were already talking about the struggling economy. And so we were like, you know what? We were, even on our own team, we were talking about it, and our budgets were already kind of formatted. And so we felt like it was safe to go ahead and release this because people were already finalizing budgets for the next year.
Yeah, I see. I think in that time frame, the recession, I don't even want to call it that way, but has already incorporated
right.
or somehow. And I also think that that comes out of your report pretty strongly is a lot of companies these days know their content KPIs, they said, right? And so is there a relationship or a relation maybe between companies that know their content KPIs and can justify the budget, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was probably one of the biggest stories that we saw from this data is that there is a clear connection, not causation, but a clear correlation between people whose leadership really understands the value of content and the teams that are seeing an increase in resources. So time, talent, budget, all that good things. I think really it was strong enough that we were all actually kind of surprised by it. I mean, it makes sense, right? If your leadership understands the value of your content, which is proven by you understanding the value of your content, and using data to understand that, then they're more likely to give you more money, more people, more resources. And so really getting to the core of your data and your content performance is extremely important to filling those resource gaps.
I see. But still, teams said they are kind of struggling with having enough people in the teams, right? That is still an every year
always
topic.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know that will ever get better, to be honest. I think, we talked about in one of our past webinars actually that like the more you get, the more you need, right? So it's always going to be a problem to never have enough resources, but it's what you do with your existing resources that matters.
Okay. But surprisingly, so I have the numbers here because in preparation I was like, oh, this is kind of confusing for me. 76% of people said like they have content KPIs set to their content and they understand it, but only 50% of all people you have asked said they use this information to fell business decisions. So How
Yeah,
do you
isn't that
explain
weird?
that gap? Yeah, it's completely weird.
I think, and honestly, I think part of this, and I can attest to this because this is what happened at my last company, is that people use data to prove results, but they only, gather the data that their leadership is wanting. They don't really dive into content performance for their own needs. They're only looking at it to, report on things to the people who are asking about it. So rather than using data day to day to incorporate those into your strategy, they're simply looking at it as a means to an end. And I really think that's where that gap is coming from.
It's like, okay, report done, boss.
Yep.
Go out of my way. I'm doing now what I want to do. Let
Right.
me produce my content.
And a lot of places now are still what we like to call content vending machines. So they're just taking content orders basically from other departments and from stakeholders and leadership and just producing whatever content other people want them to produce rather than looking at it as a strategic thing,
Yes. Yeah. I think I experienced that in every company I was doing content marketing in. It was always the same. And I kind of still fall in the same trap.
It's hard not to.
It's really hard. I want to give a hug to all marketers that struggle from that, because it is so easy to go into that default mode of, we have some new product, we have some company news, let's produce a blog post and get that thing out of the way, because we have to produce it, because we cannot explain exactly why it is unnecessary, or we cannot always say, no, we don't want to produce. It's really hard out there actually to say, why do you want to produce that content? What do you want to achieve with that piece? It's really hard.
Yeah. It's hard to balance between making everybody happy and also producing what is actually going to perform well, and really looking at your OKRs and your KPIs and saying, is this worth the time and energy that we have to put into it, Yeah,
and to think also about every step of the production, and not only, it's just 4 to 6 hours to produce a blog post, or it's just a couple of hours to record that podcast here, but we have to do a post-production, we have to distribute it, we have to approve everything from every company and every site. So there's a lot more into content than stakeholders sometimes think, and then the time and energy is wasted. But I think that's so super typical. But also it is hard. I mean, if I say no to content and say maybe, well, I don't see how that pays out for our company goals or for our content marketing goals, I don't want to produce it. On the other hand side, I can be challenged all the time. Well, then show me the success of your content, right? And when I then log into Google Analytics and say, look, the content I have produced has maybe some hundreds page views, that's not really an argument or a discussion I want to have as a content marketer. How can I avoid getting into that situation, and how can I prove the success of my content?
Yeah, I think really what it comes down to, and don't get me started on Google Analytics, but...
Well, you can. That's why we're here.
That's true. Yeah, the problem with Google Analytics is that a lot of the metrics, and I mean, it's a great tool, right? It's free. It has everything you need, but it is hard to use. And especially now that a lot of teams, well, not a lot, every team now has to migrate to Google Analytics 4, which doesn't actually meet all of the needs of a lot of teams. It's becoming even more frustrating to have to go in there and figure out where you're trying to find your stuff. Maybe you have a data person on your team. Maybe you have a dedicated data team. But if you, the content marketer, are not able to go into that tool and figure out what you need to figure out, it becomes a whole more complicated process. You're having to wait for somebody else to go in there. You're having to create custom reports. And the reason I actually wanted to use Parsley to begin with is so that I could find the data that I needed at my last company. And the thing that I love about Parsley is that we make it really easy to prove your content ROI. Google Analytics is really focused on website performance, on historical analysis and things like that. But what Parsley does is create data and dashboards for the content marketer, not for the data person, right? And that's why I love it so much. But really, you have to look at conversions. You have to look at engage time. And a lot of people, I'm glad you brought up page views, because that's what a lot of people go to, is page views, because it's an easy metric to look at. And the problem with page views is that it doesn't show you unique visitors. It doesn't show you how long people are engaged, because you might get a view, but then they're leaving to go somewhere else if they're not finding what they're looking for. So looking at content performance is so much more than just looking at traffic. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is that page views look great. It seems like it's a lot of people, or it's not very many people. But what that should tell you is that something's wrong with that content. Either it's not meeting the format people want, it's not the topic, it's not what they expected to get based on the headline. There's so much that you can learn from data that a lot of people get overwhelmed by. I don't know if that answered your question. I went on a tangent. I really love talking about it.
Exactly. And I have to hold myself back to not go on a rant completely about that topic, because it's like completely resonating with me what you were telling. It's like I have to care about that Google Analytics switch to Google Analytics 4. And I tried it once, and I was looking at the dashboard with a completely changed UI, and I was like, why are you doing that to me? Why I spent learning 10 years, 15,
Seriously.
20 years learning that tool, and all the workarounds I need, because it's a data analytics tool for website owners, actually.
Right.
And in content marketing, we build all the custom reports. If you use Google Analytics for content marketing, it's fine. It's fine, but
It's fine.
you end up being a data analyst. And I ended up in companies actually having a data engineer, an analytics engineer only for Google Analytics within a content marketing team.
Yeah.
And that says so much about the state of how we are looking at data analytics to justify content spendings, and to have a specialized tool that gives way more options out of the box makes absolutely sense for me. So I think shamelessly advertising block from my side here. If you are affected, and you are affected by the Google Analytics switch to Google Analytics 4, have a look at dedicated content analytics tools. It can be Parsley. There are others out there also. Just take that into consideration, that you don't have to actually stick to Google Analytics to analyze your content. Although Google Analytics is a great tool, you should run it on your website, from my opinion, and I probably will have multiple settings. So having
Right.
Google Analytics, I will not have Google Analytics only because I have a second tool to justify my content or to analyze my content. You talked about return on investment on content or on certain KPIs. So is there a particular KPI or segmentation, or I don't know, anything which you particularly like about the data analytics options you have in Parsley? Is there something you really dig into? What's your favorite?
Yeah, I think, gosh, I'm in Parsley literally every day, so it's hard to pick a favorite. But I really like how we have our conversions set up. They are specifically focused on content conversions, so not just regular get a demo button or contact form or whatever. We actually have 3 different attribution models. So we have linear, we have first touch, and we have last touch. So linear means that it attributes some of the conversion to every single piece of content that somebody is touching. First touch is just what it sounds like. It's the first piece of content. And then last touch, obviously, is what it sounds like as well, the last piece of content. And the nice thing about that is that, one, it's automatic. So we're always checking for conversions. But also, depending on what your goal is, you can use the different attribution models. So like if your goal is brand awareness, you're going to want to use first touch. If your goal is strictly lead generation, probably last touch. But in general, linear is also a great way to see what path people are taking through your content. You can learn a lot about your users that way, and it's really unique the way that we have our conversions set up, and it's really fun to kind of dig into those.
Yeah, attribution models are definitely some discussions all the time. We have, for example, sales and marketing in one team, actually in one department. And it's all the time the discussions, how we attribute leads and conversion.
Yep.
I'm a big fan of linear because like everybody gets their share on the success, but obviously, yeah, sales is closing it in the end. So it's last touch. We all know that. But jokes aside, you talked about lead generation. What about gated content? Are people using it? Are you using it? What is your opinion on having gated content in 2023?
This is a loaded question. I think this is actually an ongoing discussion for us because, for example, we see a lot of our lead generation come from webinars, but we don't see as much of that come from long form pieces of content. At least it's not as much as we used to. And so there's been a lot of discussion around ungating all of that and just going toward things like demand base or like consumer information tools that help us gather that information without having the form. But at the same time, our sales team really loves the qualification that comes from gating content, right? So if somebody is, willfully giving their information, they're going to be a lot more likely to want to talk to you and interested in your product. So it's kind of a catch-22. It's definitely, like I said, an ongoing discussion for us. But I think it really depends on what performance you've seen from your gated content, right? Like that's why the data is so important, because we really dove into that and figured out, okay, well, webinars are worth gating, but maybe long forms aren't. We did gate our Content Matters report, but part of that is because it's our flagship campaign for the entire year, right? So we know that it's valuable. We know that people are willing to pass over their email for it. And so I think it depends on the type of content and your industry and everything like that.
And let's phrase it like that. If they would not have gated the content you were looking at when you contacted VIP for the first time, you would not have a chance to talk to the awesome people there and would not have the job now. So
yeah,
gating content is sometimes worth it, right?
Yep.
But yeah, it's a hard discussion. So on one hand side, you want the exposure, you want the reach, you want to give out so much for free, but you also have needs of knowing some contact information to reach out some point. So at the end of a funnel, like the report is. And you're also putting out a lot of content free at WordPress VIP. So everyone who's interested in reading more from Kayla or from her colleagues can go to WordPressVIP.com and look at the blog or go onto your LinkedIn profile and watch what you're publishing there. So they put out bits and pieces from the report all the time and other important contents.
We also, we just are we're big on repurposing content, right? So we're actually doing worksheets and templates associated with each section of the report now, so that it actually walks you through step by step on how to analyze some of these things we're talking about, how to perform some of these strategies we talk about, and we're really excited about those. They've been really helpful for people.
Let's come back a bit to the key aspects or the key learnings of the report. You said, we see teams are growing, budgets growing, but in fact, also a lot of the people said they are focusing more on quality over quantity. So they increase their spend and their effort, but they're producing less. This is a good sign, right?
It's a fantastic sign. We're all tired, right? I think. Yeah. With the rise of content marketing, actually our CEO, Nick, he said that all marketing is content marketing now. And 100%, everything is content, right? Everything that is going out into the world that is representing your brand is content. And so marketing teams are overwhelmed with the amount of just stuff that we have to do and produce, and people need to slow down. And content saturation is a real thing. You can oversaturate your own site with content and your own channels, and it will drown your audience when they're trying to find what they need. So really slowing down and focusing on quality over quantity, I think everybody is excited about doing that.
Yeah, as it's everyone's dream to be, but it also comes with a lot of burden or responsibility. Let's say with great quality comes great responsibility, because that if you produce less, you have less chances to create a hit. Like, I mean, what I always tell when I do workshop or a speech for people, especially for content beginners, I always shock them with a number like 90% of the content you produce will not succeed and will go into the trash bin. 5% is on a threshold and has the chance, has the potential to be good if you optimize it, and 5% will be good. So if you put the volume down,
It's kind of painful when you talk about it like that.
They're all shocked. And I don't know if it's still the same, but like in the 2010s, I saw that in multiple companies where I joined and went into data analytics and was like, why have you produced that all the years? It's completely useless. What have you reached with it? It's just, but it's kind of necessary to produce filler songs as a band to land the hit. If you cannot only write hits, we are not like we are not Madonna or whatever. It's even Madonna has some B-sides.
Right.
You know? It's part of the game, and we have to live with that. But if we focus on quality, we may increase the chance of the piece being a hit. But it's also we are spending more resources on it in the production phase, so that really has to shine when it gets published, which makes data analytics and personalization, knowing what resonates with the audience, more important. So that is an interesting thing, going more into quality. We see it definitely in our company too, that we say, what this really matters for us to drive company success through marketing activities, where's the platform, etc. But on the other hand side, this year we had last year already, and it's already hyped down a bit, the topic of artificial intelligence, where everybody was going crazy about, that basically makes it possible to spam the whole web full of my content. So do you have an opinion on that? So on the one hand side, they say they wanted to go quality. On the other hand side, hey, here's AI. Let's produce a lot.
I have so many thoughts about AI. But what's tough is that there's a lot of misconceptions around AI too, especially when it comes to content, because people see, it's producing blog articles in the span of a minute, but what they don't see is that, because I use ChatGPT almost every day with my job, but I use it as a tool, right? Because when it spits out a blog article, one, it sounds like it was written by a middle schooler who was, who read 4 articles and then summarized it with a bunch of filler. But 2, it doesn't write it in our brand voice or tone, which I know, but it will never really fully grasp. And there are still inaccuracies. Like even if we ask it to write something that is pretty well known, it's going to pull from all of the available sources on the internet, which sometimes have inaccuracies. So it's just regurgitating that information to you. And I don't remember where I heard this. It might have been something our CEO was talking about, Matt Mullenweg. But just like people, you have to take what it says with a grain of salt, right? Because if somebody is telling you something, you can't automatically trust everything that they're telling you, right? They're human. They make mistakes. Even robots make mistakes because they're regurgitating information created by humans. So in reality, you really have to use it as a tool and not a solution. And I think a lot of people don't really understand all of the steps to creating and publishing content. And AI is just not there yet. It's not a full service solution.
Yeah. And I wonder these days, so I was very hyped last year because like, oh my God, I get results in seconds, which took me, even as experienced content marketer, minutes or hours to put together. So it's really good in some use cases to comprehend data, to paraphrase it. But if you think of it like an advanced level, like you said, an experienced content manager or content marketer is able to write in a certain tone of voice, has way more stylistic choices than the AI, and can put together information much better and connect topics. And also you have to handle your internal stakeholders on topics, have to bring everything together. So I think the job is kind of complex and driven by so many things, and AI is not a solution but a tool.
Right.
Definitely a tool to get quicker on certain aspects, and it definitely will be interesting to see the development in that year, but it definitely is not, so you say in conclusion, not the driving force in it will change the content amount, at least for the people you interviewed, like they're going on quality.
Right.
So,
and honestly, for me, it's been really helpful to create really technical pieces. So like, I am not a developer, but we write a lot of content for developers, and I understand almost none of that, right? So instead of having to interview a subject matter expert or 2 or 3, digest all of that information, read from 20 resources, and then spend hours writing this blog, I can create a draft with AI and then have our subject matter experts review it for accuracy. And that has drastically reduced the amount of publication time, or the publishing time, that we need for super technical stuff. But what it doesn't do is thought leadership. It will never be able to do that because all it's doing is gathering what's already out there. So really what's going to differentiate companies at this point, and content teams specifically, is the thought leadership aspect of it.
Yeah. That was also some one key result of your report, the reasons why companies produce content, right? Thought leadership, I think brand, and return on investment they also want to have. So these 3 have been the main ones. Am I right?
Yeah, I believe so. Those are, and those stay pretty stagnant. Those are usually about the same. They were, I think, pretty neck and neck from last year as well. And I think now, especially with AI and with the downturn in the economy, I think a lot of content is going to be shifting to retention and customer expansion rather than necessarily lead generation, because people aren't in a buying mindset right now, or at least in a switching mindset, right? But they are in a place where they don't want to switch, and so retaining those customers is going to be extremely important.
Yeah, it's more cost efficient to retain an existing customer than to find a new one these days, which is, on the one side, I have to say, a good a good thing that we not only focus on quick business that is not caring about anything because there's a new client around every corner next way, and just caring about existing customers, because we are all customers from certain companies and want to be good treated, right? We all have stories to share, I think. Should we point a conclusion to the Content Matters Report 2023 and wrap it up?
Sure.
Is there yeah, Kayla, do you have anything? Do we have missed anything in this episode which we have not talked about, maybe, or not emphasized enough?
I'm trying to think. I think that really the biggest takeaway from this is just how important data is to being able to do your job well. You can do your job day to day without data, right? You can just go through the motions, but becoming data driven for your entire team becoming data driven is really what sets apart the, top level of content marketers from the people who are kind of just getting by. So if you are wanting to get into data, but you don't really know where to start, we have a ton of resources on our websites on Parsley and WordPress VIP about what metrics really matter for engagement and just kind of getting started and redoing your content strategy a little bit and revamping it. And so I really encourage you to not be scared to take the leap, because data doesn't have to be scary. It is in Google Analytics, but it doesn't have to be.
Very, very well said. Thank you very much, Kayla. Wise words at the end. Before we close this episode, we still have your 3 facts about yourself open to solve a little misery you put us in. Can you repeat your facts? I think.
Yes.
What were they?
The first one is that I've visited 14 countries. I've read 40 books this year. And
how many?
40. 40.
Okay, that's a lot.
It is a lot. And I built a mechanical box to train crows to bring me shiny things.
Okay, so first one, you visited 14 countries. Mm-hmm. For a European-based person, that would be like one trip to school. Like
right.
through the mountains in the snow without shoes, like my grandpa tell me this story all the time. He had to go through Switzerland.
It's a lot more for an American.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think that is true because I know you a little bit, and we met in London, and you were using the chance of the business trip to visit Scotland, and that's also a very good perk of your employer to have to say that you can combine remote work and traveling.
Mm-hmm. One of our marketing team is hiring a bunch of positions right now, so go check that out.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I think that is true. The second one, 40 books. It's a lot. But I hope it is true, because if you want to read good, like Stephen King said it, I think Stephen King is a writer that has influenced me a lot about writing processes and stuff. And he always says, if you don't read, how do you think you can write? So as your heart is for writing, I think that's insane, but it is true. It's much, but it is true. And the crow thing, I would love that it is true that you train them, but I think that's the lie.
All right.
So, am I right?
You are wrong.
Oh.
So the lie is that I visited 14 countries. I visited 13. My 14th one is coming next month.
Yeah. Okay. Where are you going?
Costa Rica for our marketing meetup. Actually, our team is meeting in person there.
Awesome.
Yeah. I have read 40 books this year. It's funny because that was actually going to be my lie, but I finished my 40th book last night.
Okay. What was your favorite book you read this year?
Oh, gosh. I really enjoy fantasy, and so I've been reading a lot of that lately. I don't even know if I could pick a favorite. I've also read a lot of memoirs and autobiographies. What did I just finish? Gosh, I can't even remember.
You read so much. There's like, it's like if you ask a person who's sophisticated into music or into books, and you ask, what's your favorite? It's like why your favorite? There's no good or bad. There's just music and books and stories and literature. There's no judgment. Everything is beautiful at some aspect, you know.
Yeah, that's honestly how I feel. Like I read all kinds of books. I mean, if it's in front of me, I'll probably read it. I just really like learning and experiencing new stories and stuff. And I like them all for such different reasons. It's so hard to pick, but really big into fantasy, really big into also autobiographies and stuff like that. But yes, I have also built a box to train my neighborhood crows.
Really? Was it successful?
Not yet. It's a really long process. So okay. I built it. It's mechanized. Like it's got a sensor on it and all this stuff. There's an open source project called Crowbox that kind of walks you through it, which is really cool. Big advocate for open source, obviously.
Yes.
But it hasn't quite worked yet. The crows in my neighborhood are still a little bit nervous. I have 2 dogs, so I think they aren't a huge fan of my house, but I'm working on it. It is in progress.
Nice. That's a crazy story. I wished it was true. I said it at the beginning, and now it is true. It makes you a lovely but crazy person. Thank you for sharing that insight with us.
Absolutely.
And thank you for being here today, our guest in our show. It was a pleasure to have you here. It was a pleasure to get insights into your Content Matters Report 2023. And everyone who's interested in downloading that thing, link below somewhere here. Or if you're watching on YouTube or Spotify or on social media, or go to WordPressVIP.com and look for the Content Matters Report 2023. Thank you for being our guest, Kayla.
Thank you for having me. This was really lovely.
The Online Marketing Cabin is brought to you by Impside, Europe's biggest WordPress agency. If you run a website or online shop or are in need of a WordPress or WooCommerce plugin, Impside is your go-to agency for solutions on an enterprise scale.